For centuries, Africa has been the world's greatest paradox. A land overflowing with wealth yet trapped in poverty. A continent filled with everything it needs to lead the world yet constantly told it must follow. Why? Who benefits from this? And most importantly, who is working to ensure that Africa never rises?
That France is taking over $500 billion out of Africa every year. The latest figures are saying for every 14 billion France takes out of Africa, by the time they finish investing it, it's over 300 billion. I'll let you do the math. And we're busy fighting over. Oh, but the African heads of states, I'm not saying they're not a problem. But I'm saying corruption is a team sport. We must bring all the corruptors to boot. And when you understand what is going on, you can better...
Dr. Arikana has been warning about this. A united Africa is the greatest threat to global powers. If Africa stands together, it controls the richest lands on Earth. If Africa develops itself, it no longer needs aid, loans, or foreign investors dictating its future. If Africa wakes up, the system that has kept it poor collapses overnight. And this is exactly why they fear us. They know the power of a self-sufficient Africa, and they will do whatever it takes to keep the continent divided, underdeveloped, and dependent. They build the infrastructure, control the industries, and own the resources, not because Africa cannot do it, but because they don't want Africa to realize it can. Africa does not need saving. It needs to recognize its power before it is too late. The question is, will Africa finally rise, or will it remain in chains, this time, not by force, but by deception? Let's find out. Africa is at a turning point. Who will shape its future? The answer is simple. Either Africans take the lead in constructing their nations, or external forces will do it for them, on their terms. History has a pattern, and that pattern tells a story. The infrastructure that once defined Africa's colonial past, railways, ports, administrative cities, wasn't built for Africans. It was built to extract wealth and to move resources out of Africa, not within it. Today, as Africa modernizes, the same question lingers. Who is building Africa? And for whose benefit? Investment in African infrastructure is booming, but the fine print is rarely discussed. Foreign governments, multinational corporations, and private investors aren't building out of goodwill. They invest because they see long-term influence and profits. When a non-African entity builds a railway, a bridge, or a power plant, who owns it? Who controls the maintenance, the supply chains, and the technology behind it? If an African country cannot repair its power grid without external help, is it truly independent? Take telecommunications. Many African countries have thriving mobile networks, but the software, hardware, and data servers are often owned by foreign corporations. This means sensitive data, economic transactions, and even national security information can be accessed by outside entities. This is not just about who builds. It's about who controls what has been built. Imagine a house built on your land, but the builder holds the keys. That is the reality of infrastructure in many parts of Africa today. Roads, bridges, and energy grids are being developed, but under conditions that often favor the builders more than the hosts. Loans for major projects come with strings attached, debt obligations, control over operational decisions, and political leverage. Many of these deals involve high-interest loans or resource-backed agreements, where Africa repays infrastructure investments with natural resources. That means mines, oil fields, or agricultural exports are handed over to external control for decades just to pay off a road or a dam.
Back 400 years ago, the brain drain out of Africa has really left Africa in a very bad place. Now picture this situation now. The boundaries are all melting away. Guess what? Now that Cape to Cairo highway can be built, the question is, who is going to build it? Massive commercial farms are going to be opened up. The question is, who is going to own them? New airports, roads, hospitals, schools. who's going to build them. Because the children who need to build their Africa, the children who own the minerals and Africa's wealth are in the diaspora. Are they ready to stand up and take the place that is their name? My findings are the children of Africa are still fast asleep and too busy running away from Africa.
When you don't own the tools of development, you become a spectator in your future. Africa must ask itself, are we merely spectators, or are we the architects of our destiny? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Every year, headlines praise Africa's infrastructure growth. But who is getting the jobs? Who is gaining the expertise? Too often, major infrastructure projects bring in foreign engineers, foreign planners, and foreign laborers. Africans are left watching rather than participating. Without deliberate policies to ensure technology transfer and skills development, Africa risks permanent dependency. If today's railways, highways, and power plants are all designed and maintained by non-African experts, then tomorrow's Africa will still be waiting for permission to move forward. The real challenge isn't just about construction. It's about who holds the knowledge to build, maintain, and expand. If Africa cannot independently develop and repair its infrastructure, it will always be vulnerable to external pressure. Africa's infrastructure needs are massive, and every year, new contracts are signed, new highways are paved, and new power grids are connected. But beneath the excitement of development lies a deeper question. Who is truly benefiting from this construction boom? The reality is, if Africa does not urgently take control of its growth, others will step in, not as partners, but as landlords.
This is what's going to happen, my brothers and sisters. The Chinese, they're already in Africa, but they're getting ready to double up. The Europeans have been in Africa, they're getting ready to double up. Africa is going to become a first world. The question is, who is going to take it to become a first world? Is it the Chinese? Is it the Europeans? Or is it going to be you and I, my brothers and sisters? It is really that simple. 2017, President Trump was addressing the African heads of states. He flat out said, you African presidents, I don't know why your countries are poor. My friends go to Africa poor, they come back rich. A lot of diaspora called me to say, but Ambassador, how could you say that? I said, well, did the man say anything that wasn't true? The question you should be asking me is, what do I need to do to go and take what is rightfully mine? The heads of state are saying, Ambassador, the children of Africa in the diaspora must come home and take what is rightfully theirs. Africa is going to be built. There is nothing wrong with you investing in Africa, coming back to America and play golf just like they do.
This is the game of influence, a game as old as history itself. No empire was ever built without investments, and no superpower ever gained control without controlling the physical and digital infrastructure of a land. If Africa does not dictate the terms of its progress, others will do it on their behalf, and those who build do not build for free. Whether it's Western governments, Asian investors, or multinational corporations, the pattern is always the same. They bring the money, the equipment, and the expertise, but they also bring their agenda. A continent with no control over its development is not truly independent. Roads that do not belong to you can be closed off. Digital networks that are not yours can be monitored. Energy grids controlled by outsiders can be shut down at will. This is the unspoken reality behind Africa's infrastructure rush. Whoever builds it owns it. And ownership, in the modern world, is another word for control. This is why Dr. Arikana says, Africa has everything it needs, but those who step in to build it are not here for charity. They see the future before Africans do. and they are positioning themselves to control it. The tragedy is that Africa is not being deprived of development. It is simply being guided into a development model that benefits outsiders first and locals last. Foreign investors are not rushing to Africa because they believe in Africa's dreams. They are coming because they understand Africa's value better than Africans themselves. They see what lies beneath the soil, what is possible with the right technology, and what will happen once the continent fully rises. They are not afraid of a weak Africa. They are afraid of a strong one. A self-sufficient, industrialized Africa means competition. It means an end to cheap labor, the raw materials that flow outward, and the endless cycle of dependency.
The opportunities that are opening up in Africa today are opportunities that black people never even know about. And they're saying, we want the children of Africa to be on the driver's seat. You see, you don't go to China and find black people driving the Chinese development agenda. You don't go to Mexico. You don't go to Europe. You don't go to India and find black people driving the developmental agendas for those continents and those countries. You therefore must not, should not, and by God will not go to Africa and find non-Africans driving the African continental development agenda. Unless, of course, and by African, I'm referring to all people of African descent. Because in my opinion, and the opinions of those African heads of states, we are all Africans.
This is why external players are always ready to step in, not just to provide loans and investments, but to shape how and where Africa develops. Infrastructure decisions are not just about roads and bridges. They are about geopolitics. Every dam that is built, every fiber optic cable that is laid, and every power plant that is constructed carries a deeper strategic significance. It determines who will hold influence, who will set the terms of trade, and who will decide how Africa interacts with the rest of the world. Some deals appear generous on paper, offering billions in funding with low interest rates, but what is hidden in the fine print? Land rights, mineral concessions, long-term tax incentives. These are the real currencies of control. A power station built with foreign investment might light up an African city, but if that same power station is owned and operated by outsiders, then who truly benefits? The electricity might flow, but so do the profits, the leverage, and the long-term influence. Dr. Arikana often warns that this is not just about infrastructure. It is about Africa's ability to see itself as the owner of its destiny. The problem is not that Africa lacks wealth. It is that others have spent centuries ensuring that Africa never fully understands its power. This is why outsiders rush to build, because they know what is coming. They see the massive youth population that will dominate the global workforce. They see the resources that are needed for the next generation of technology. They see the strategic location of African ports and trade routes. They see everything, while Africa is still being told that it has nothing.
I've heard some come up with stupid comments like, but well, Ambassador, those heads of state, they just want to take our money. You are being told not to go to Africa because it is a diseased and dying continent, while they are running to Africa in droves. Try catching any of the flights into Africa. 75% of the people don't look like you and I. Even intercontinental, within the continent, flights within the continent, most of the people there don't look like you and I, and yet you are busy being told, don't go to Africa. Why are they going to Africa in droves if there's nothing there? They're not traveling 10,000 miles, 15,000 miles for nothing. They're going to Africa because there's something amazing and wonderful going on, and they don't want you to know.
This is a dangerous illusion, and it must be broken. There is no such thing as a gift in global politics. There is no investment without expectation. The question Africa must ask itself is this: why are others so eager to invest, while Africans themselves hesitate? If the resources exist, if the markets are growing, and if the demand is clear, why should it take foreign hands to build what Africans can build for themselves? This is what Dr. Arikana says. When someone else builds your future, they do not do it out of generosity. They do it because they want to shape it, control it, and benefit from it. Africa cannot afford to be a passive participant in its own story. The longer it waits, the more entrenched external control becomes. The clock is ticking. Either Africa builds itself, or it will be built by others again. But this time, the price of dependency will be far greater than ever before. Africa cannot outsource its future. If you are not the one setting the agenda, then you are following someone else's script. A continent with over 1 billion people should not be waiting for development plans written in Washington, Brussels, or Beijing. It should be defining its blueprint, tailored to its resources, its culture, and its economic needs. The truth is, Africa has everything it needs to build itself. It has the raw materials for industry, the land for agriculture, and the workforce to transform ideas into action. What it lacks is the singular vision and coordination to turn potential into reality. No other region in the world allows outsiders to dictate its priorities the way Africa does. The European Union does not wait for foreign consultants to tell it how to structure its economy. China did not rise by asking for development plans from international organizations. Africa must learn from this. Real power comes from control over your path. One of the greatest obstacles to self-determined growth is the lack of economic integration within Africa itself. The continent is still divided by economic systems that favor exports to foreign markets rather than trade between African nations. A country like Ghana can produce cocoa, but instead of processing it into chocolate within its borders, it exports raw beans to European factories that make the final product. Meanwhile, African supermarkets are stocked with foreign-made goods that could have been produced locally if the right industries existed. This is why Dr. Arikana says, Africa cannot keep growing the food but letting others eat the meal. It is time for Africa to stop being a supplier of raw materials and start being a manufacturer of finished products.
So the sooner we wake up and realize that we are inheritors of an amazing continent, that everything that is in Africa belongs to us. If we do not stand up and take our place, Africa is gone, this time for good. So I'm here to let you all know that we are at a do or die time in the history of Black people. We have a tremendous opportunity that will never come again. Opportunities that we as Black people are never exposed to anywhere else on earth. It is our time to let the world know once and for all that we've had enough, and we're saying enough is enough. We can no longer continue to be the most disrespected race. We've got to pull our finances together. I've registered an entity called African Diaspora Development Institute. It is going to be the one-stop shop for everything African. I will be opening offices in every African country, and I am looking the heads of states in the face and say, this is how you're going to get the diaspora. You see, in the past, it was, well, we don't know how to reach the diaspora ambassador. And they were right, because we were not organized. We were not united. But through ADDI, I'm going to look them in the face and say, now the diaspora are coming home. Give me one reason why the next airport is going to be built by a non-African. And I use airport as an example. Look at Atlanta Airport. Maynard Jackson said he was not going to approve the opening of that airport unless 50% of the contractors were Black. They tried to say, well, we can't find them, we don't know where they are. He said, well, then the airport will not be built. I see how quickly they found the Black contractors. Atlanta Airport today is one of the busiest and one of the best airports in the world. It is the largest airport in the world, run by Black people, built by Black people. Hallelujah.
Africa does not lack talent. It lacks the vision to harness that talent for itself. There is no reason why Africa should be sending its brightest young people abroad to seek education when world-class universities can be built at home. There is no reason why African doctors should be treating patients in the West when they are desperately needed in African hospitals. There is no reason why African engineers should be designing skyscrapers in Dubai when their cities need them more. This is the real tragedy of Africa's development. It is not that Africa is incapable, it is that it has been trained to look outside itself for solutions. The expertise needed to develop Africa already exists. It is simply being used elsewhere. If Africa does not create the right environment, it will remain a continent that exports brains and imports dependency. The African diaspora must also realize that returning home is not just a moral obligation, it is an opportunity. Africa is the last economic frontier, a continent with unmatched potential in industry, agriculture, technology, and energy. Those who invest now will be the pioneers of the next global economic shift. Entire markets are waiting to be built, entire industries waiting for leadership. The diaspora must not wait for governments to invite them. They must take the initiative, build networks, and create opportunities that do not rely on external approval. The time for hesitation is over. The time to act is now. The question is, who will answer the call? Do you think this is the right time to wake up? Will Africans respond to the call? Let us know in the comment section. If not now, then when? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.